There is a thought that follows you everywhere. Not loud, not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It is just there. When you wake up, it's the first thing you feel, before you've even remembered what day it is. It sits in your chest like a stone you've learned to carry. And the worst part? Nothing is actually wrong. There is no emergency. No one is in danger. Nothing has collapsed. But the mind, your mind, refuses to believe that. And so it searches. It scans the room, scans your life, scans every conversation from last week, looking for the threat it cannot find. This is what modern science calls anxiety. And this is what the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, called papanca, the proliferating mind, the mind that spins stories out of nothing. And here is the thing that changes everything. Anxiety is not telling you the truth. Anxiety is not telling you the truth. It is not a message from reality. It is not wisdom. It is not even a warning. It is a habit. And today, I want to show you what Buddhist philosophy has understood about this habit for over 2 millennia, and how that understanding can become your greatest tool for freedom. In the next 15 minutes, I am going to walk you through 5 Buddhist truths about anxiety. Not techniques, not breathing exercises, not a list of habits. Truths. Because the problem with most anxiety advice is this: it tries to help you manage anxiety. Buddhist philosophy does something different. It goes to the root. It asks, what is anxiety really? Where does it come from? And is the self that is anxious who you actually are? These are not comfortable questions, but they are the questions that, when you sit with them honestly, don't just reduce your anxiety. They dissolve its grip on you entirely. Let's begin. There is a teaching from the Buddhist texts that I want to start with. Not a philosophy, not a concept, a story. One morning, a young monk came to the Buddha. He had not slept well. He had spent the night tormented by thoughts about the future, about his practice, about whether he was making any progress at all. He sat before the Buddha and said, "Teacher, I am suffering, not from anything that has happened, but from everything that hasn't happened yet, and might." The Buddha was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You have been shot by an arrow." The monk looked confused. "But teacher, I feel no wound. Nothing has happened to me." And the Buddha said, "The first arrow is pain. It comes from life. You cannot always avoid it. Illness comes, loss comes, uncertainty comes. This is the first arrow. It is part of being alive. But you," the Buddha continued gently, "you have taken a second arrow, and you are driving it into the same wound yourself. The second arrow is this: what you tell yourself about the pain, the questions you ask. What if it gets worse? Why is this happening to me? Will I ever be free of this?" The monk was silent. And then the Buddha said something that I want you to sit with. The first arrow may or may not find you. That is not always in your hands. But the second arrow, every single time, is a choice. This is not a story about ignoring pain. This is not a story about pretending you are fine. This is a story about one very precise thing: the difference between what life gives you and what you do to yourself with your own mind. Anxiety, in the Buddhist understanding, is almost always the second arrow. Something uncertain happens, or doesn't happen at all. And then the mind picks up its own arrow and begins, But what if? What does this mean? I can't handle it if. The first pain may have been a moment. The second arrow can last for years. And here is the question the Buddha was asking. Do you want to put the second arrow down? What I'm about to share is not a cure. It is a lens. And sometimes a new lens is worth more than 100 techniques. Because when you see clearly what is happening, when you understand the mechanism, the anxiety loses its authority over you. It cannot pretend to be truth anymore. 5 truths. The first truth is this. Anxiety is something that happens in you, not something that is you. Buddhist philosophy has a concept called anatta, usually translated as non-self. It sounds abstract, but here is the simplest version. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that notices the thoughts. Think of the sky. Storms move through the sky, clouds form and dissolve, thunder comes and goes, but the sky itself is not disturbed. The sky does not become the storm. Anxiety is a storm. It is a pattern of thought and sensation moving through your awareness. It is not you. This distinction matters more than anything else I will say today. Because as long as you believe, I am anxious, you are the storm. The moment you begin to practice, anxiety is present in me, you become the sky. The same experience, a completely different relationship to it. And that difference is where freedom begins. I want you to notice something. When you are anxious, really anxious, what are you thinking about? The future. Always the future. What might happen? What could go wrong? What if? Buddhist philosophy calls this papanca, mental proliferation, the mind's tendency to take one small concern and spin it into 100. An uncertain moment becomes an imagined disaster. And here is what the Buddha noticed. The future is not real yet. The thing you are afraid of does not exist. The conversation you are dreading has not happened. The outcome you are catastrophizing about is not here. You are suffering in a place that does not exist, in a time that has not arrived. The practice, the Buddhist practice, is simply to notice when the mind has left, and to return to this breath, this moment, this room, this body. Not forever, not with force, just return. The third truth is the most compassionate one. Your anxiety is not a flaw. It is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that evolution worked. 200,000 years ago, the humans who survived were not the calm ones. They were the anxious ones, the ones who assumed the rustling in the grass was a predator, the ones who prepared for the worst. They lived, and they passed that trait down to you. Your nervous system was designed for a world that no longer exists. It cannot tell the difference between a tiger and an unanswered email. It fires the same alarm for both. The Buddha called this tanha, craving and aversion, the mind's automatic tendency to grasp for what feels safe and recoil from what feels threatening. It is not wisdom, it is reflex. And here is what I want you to hear. You are not broken. You are a human being with an ancient nervous system trying to navigate a modern world. The anxiety is trying to protect you. It is just wrong about what the threats are. And when you understand this, when you can look at your anxious mind with something closer to tenderness than judgment, something shifts. The fourth truth is the one that surprises people the most. What you resist persists. Think about how most people respond to anxiety. They try to stop it, push it down, argue with it, tell themselves they shouldn't feel this way. This is irrational. I need to calm down. I need to stop. And what happens? The anxiety gets louder. In our last video, we explored the concept of Wu Wei, the Taoist and Buddhist principle of non-forcing. Water does not fight the rock. It moves around it, through it. Eventually, the rock yields. But if you dam the river, the pressure builds. The Buddhist approach to anxiety is radical in its simplicity. Allow it. Not agree with what it is saying, not surrender to it, but allow its presence. I notice anxiety is here. I'm not going to fight it or feed it. I'm going to let it be present while I do what matters. This is called upekkha, equanimity. And paradoxically, when you stop fighting anxiety, when you stop confirming through your resistance that it is something to fear, it loses its authority over you. Not immediately, but it quiets. The fifth truth is the one I want you to carry long after this video ends. You do not need to eliminate anxiety before you can live fully. I'll say that again. You do not need to eliminate anxiety before you can live fully. Most of us have been waiting until we feel calm enough to take the step, waiting until the fear disappears before we begin, waiting for certainty before we move. Buddhist philosophy does not offer a life without difficulty. The Buddha himself said, "Life contains dukkha, discomfort, things that are uncertain and hard and beyond our control. That will not change. What can change is your relationship to it." Think of the ocean. On the surface, waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent. But go deeper. 20 meters below the roughest storm, the water is still. Not because the storm isn't real, but because the deep water is not fighting the storm. It is simply deeper. This is what Buddhist practice builds, not a life without waves, a self deep enough that the waves don't reach the bottom. Anxiety may come and go on the surface, but you, the you that is aware of the anxiety, that notices it, that is here right now, that you is the deep water, already still, already safe, already home. So where do you actually begin? These 5 truths are not techniques you practice once and master. They are ways of seeing. But there is one practice I want to offer you, rooted in the earliest Buddhist meditation traditions. It is called noting. It is the simplest thing in the world. When anxiety arises, instead of engaging with it, analyzing it, fighting it, you simply name it, quietly in your mind. Anxiety is here. Not, I am anxious. That is the second arrow. Anxiety is here. That small shift in language, from I am to there is not just semantics. It is the beginning of anatta, the beginning of watching rather than being consumed. Try it today. Next time anxiety rises, and it will, instead of running from it or drowning in it, say quietly, anxiety is here. I see it. I am not it. And then return to whatever you were doing. Not because the anxiety is gone, but because you are bigger than it. I want to leave you with this. The anxiety you carry does not mean you are broken. It does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you will feel this way forever. It means you are human. It means you have a mind doing what minds do, searching for safety, reaching for certainty, trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. And now, because you have heard these 5 truths, you have something most people don't have: a way to see it clearly. Anxiety is not the truth about your life. It is a habit of the mind. And habits, with patience, with practice, with compassion, can change. If this video reached you, if even one of these truths landed somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are watching this in the middle of a particularly difficult time, you are not alone. You are seen, and you are more than what you are afraid of. In the next video, we're going to go deeper into one of the most misunderstood ideas in Buddhism, the idea that all suffering comes from attachment. But not in the way you might think, because the Buddhist answer to attachment is not detachment. It is something much more beautiful than that. Until then, be gentle with yourself. The quiet work you are doing, the small practice of noticing and returning, it matters more than you know.